Kind of.
Told you.
Up and up.
See now it's circulating the cool air upstairs. We didn't have.
Oh, never heard from you. Was there something you still want to talk about?
You don't mind if I pop?
Last week you said you were on TurboTax?
Or like 2 weeks ago.
No.
Yeah, all right, I need
This
to,
was my missing link.
I think I'm almost done, or almost got my papers.
All right.
You need to get an update on cash.
There you go. Oh.
Finally. Thursday.
In January.
I was looking for-
Oh,
You did.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
I think when he started on council like 4 years ago, he thought maybe he missed the first January.
Yeah, our payment schedule is weird. It's not consistent.
happy Friday.
So we got it at the end of the
Happy
month, and
Friday.
sometimes we get it on like the
Right.
5th or 6th, and I'm like, I'll forget I got that.
Yeah.
Hey, Jeremy, did you receive the email?
Well, that's right.
Yeah, that's what I.
Wow. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Happy Thursday and welcome to the Groundhog Day celebration and meeting of Lexington City Council. I'd like to, before I call the meeting to order, invite anyone who would like to speak this evening on items on the agenda or at the citizens' remarks. We have a sign-in sheet over here and invite you to sign up. I'd like to call the meeting to order, and first item, I'd like to invite everyone to please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you all very much. Next item on the agenda is consideration of the agenda. And unless there are any objections, yes, Mr. Betts.
I'd like to add a discussion of potentially paying off high interest rate debt. Higher interest rate debt, is that something that we could add to the agenda, or should I bring that up?
Have you consulted with staff for the discussion, or?
I have brought it to staff's attention.
Okay. Unless there's an objection, we can certainly add it. I would say can add it to new business. Make it item 15.3. With that addition, is there anything else on? Hearing none, we will adopt the agenda as with that modification. Next item on the agenda is presentations, and I would like to invite Eric Wilson. Eric, welcome. And happy Groundhog Day.
Happy Groundhog Day. Should we do a history of groundhogs?
Yeah.
Don't have one. I did see Quebec had an unfortunate incident. Anybody see this? Like the Quebec version of Puxatawny Phil apparently did not make it out of the hole. So blessed be he. Yes. One quick notice in 2 weeks from Saturday at the Thompson Community Center in Glasgow, the Rockbridge Regional Library will be sponsoring a program that we're partnering with called Bond of Family. It extends from a few different programs that have happened over. Is that better?
I was going to say, pull a little closer to you.
Like that.
Folks in the cheap seats can hear
Is
you.
that good now? Better?
Better?
Okay. And that will look at descendant families that descended from the men and women who lived at Buffalo Forge, both in slavery and emancipation. So we're down to like 5 generations of descendants. There's going to be a choir. There's going to be historic readings. It should be a rich family event. Builds on some of the Glasgow histories that I spoke on last time. And again, many of these families are tied within the city of Lexington at the time. In those days, of course, Lexington was the county. So we hope you'll do that. I want to flag today an event that will come on the last day of the month on February 28th. It'll be at Wilburn Downing Middle School Gymnasium. You were all specifically invited. It'd be the first hour of the day so that all 6th, 7th, and 8th graders can gather in the gymnasium. Be warned, be welcome. The point of the day will be to both wrap Black History Month with some authentic histories about the school history that have been interpreted at last summer's Juneteenth program and other kinds of events, but also really to promote school spirit in a broad and durable sense, not just through black and white photographs or like the sepia ones that I really like. We're not going to go that route. We're going to bring in the keyboard. Many of you, as I'm looking around, we're at the Juneteenth dedication. Right. And Rick Alexander and others led us in singing the Downing School song. So all the kids are going to learn that. It'll be the first time most of them have heard that. Many of you have a leg up, so we want you to share in that. We may have some of our choral students participate in that, but that should be a good collective thing. Then we'll draw on some cheerleaders, both present and past, to gain the wisdom from some of the cheer yells that we have from the alumni room. I won't pull them out of my phone, but they make for interesting historic reading, among other things. I mean, one, have to explain to students why Bedford was a rival, right? Where is Bedford would be a starting point, but why were high schools in Bedford the rival? And then also, what's a boll weevil, and like, why is a boll weevil useful in a cheer? So that'll be part of my work to do, but it should be fun. We're going to have alumni of the school. Vice Mayor Alexander's daughter is helping through her work with the RARO cheer program, and Sakina Wilson, who teaches at Waddell. We're going to figure out some meaningful and engaging way, not just to read these cheers, but to stomp them out in the bleachers and get them on the floor. And we hope that'll be a good takeaway. One of the points I'll want to make with them, and I think Vice Mayor will probably lead the program and with some of the remarks that she's shared in these settings about the reach of alumni and the reach of community legacy. But to put the questions in a candid way, what's important to preserve about your school experience? I mean, they're 13, 11, but if they came back in 30 years, if they wanted to bring somebody back in 30 years, say, this is my place, this is my experience, what would they remember? What would they want to help them remember? Whether that's gear, whether that's trophies, photographs. Will the TikTok still be around? I don't know, maybe. Maybe that is a durable form. But we hope to kind of hit the students where they live with this and make this a living event and a purposeful one forward. So in connecting the past and the present, the futures ahead, we do hope you can be there. We'll send out notice to that. But you all have been great advocates for the schools and your presence at the events. And Vice Mayor Alexander, yet again, stepping into the breach, teaching me new variations on this at every turn. Anything you want to add on that? You don't have to, but as we've banged ideas about.
I think you got it all. I think it's just, as we were trying to decide what route to take with this, we felt that school spirit that students had back in the 40s, 50s, and 60s was so important to not only school life, but the community life. That was a life of every family who had representation there. And we don't want the students of today to lose that spirit, to have a way to carry it forward, so that they will have something to think back on in 30 years.
Yeah, I'll close just saying, when I was interviewing a participant for this program in 2 weeks in Glasgow, Clarence Martin and India Martin, it was actually Ms. Martin who said that whenever you would hear the Downing alma mater around, like, your spine would go up, like, around. And my middle school, I don't even know if my high school had a school song when I was growing up in Charlottesville, but it had me thinking, what might take the place of that today. So we'll see where the 28th gets us. And thank you as always for your authentic support of the schools and our legacies.
Eric, before you take off, recap the dates again? Glasgow is February.
Glasgow, yes, will be Saturday, February 18th, 1 to 2:30. And that's at the Thompson Community Center on Catawba Street. And the Downing event, which is that's a free and open to the public event. The Downing event is not open to the full public on a school day, but certainly to officials. And I should add, we are also working on having some alumni from that era, including some of those who were the musicians and the cheerleaders there. That actually is a pretty key part of the element.
The
So,
cheerleaders are now in their 70s and 80s.
Yeah.
So it's going to be interesting to see how they,
How high they can kick.
yeah.
They'll know about the boll weevils. Yeah. Thank you.
Eric, thank you for being with us as a look back over 40 years, proud Trojan myself, and excited to see the rich history of Liberty Downing continuing to be carried out. And thanks for your efforts in leading that charge. Next item on our agenda is public hearings. The first public hearing in consideration of an amendment of the zoning ordinance to amend the PUD zoning overlay. Arnie, welcome. Be loud, be proud.
Good evening to you all. From your agenda, I'm really going to go quickly through the presentation that was given to you on the 17th of November. So towards the back of your packet. In your packet, you have the proposed plan development mixed use zoning district, and it is a rewrite of the PUD, the current plan unit development zoning that we have in the code. And this is going to be more focused on mixed use development. And the manager asked that I also provide you with maps. So in addition to the staff report with the new text and the minutes from the planning commission, you also have the presentation that was provided again on the November 17th meeting date, and the maps for the opportunity areas, and then a couple of maps of the two areas that show the lot sizes in those areas. Why are we doing a planned development mixed use zoning district? We have a land use strategy in the updated comprehensive plan that directs us to explore the creation of a new plan unit development zoning district focused on unique and flexible mixed residential development. Taking that charge, the planning commission worked for over 12 months and held many meetings and came up with an amended plan unit development. So the structure that we had in our plan unit development was utilized and amended to allow mixed use and is now called planned development mixed use. In that recommended PDMU zoning district, it is a base zoning district and not an overlay. Is allowed only in the two opportunity areas. See opportunity areas number 3 and 5 on the attached opportunity area map. And for those of you who don't have a map, those are the two areas out East Nelson Street, generally from Cole Alto all the way out to Sheets, and out South Main Street from the fire department out to the Econo Lodge. Allows a mix of uses both vertically and horizontally, provides flexibility that is not available in other standard zoning districts, requires a minimum of 3 acres in size that did not change from the current PUD text, is a zoning district that would be requested by a property owner through a rezoning process. So it's not something that we'd advertise for rezoning of properties currently, it's an option. So if a property owner currently has one of the properties in the two areas that I just mentioned along East Nelson or South Main Street, and they have 3 acres and they have a 1 level store with a retail unit with a sea of parking around it, they can come in and either do other things that are allowed if they wanted to redevelop their property, other things that are allowed in the C2 zoning district, or they can have the option of coming in if they wanted to do something mixed use. They can avail themselves of a rezoning to the PDMU zoning district. There is a 30-foot setback to any residential areas because we do have residential areas surrounding those two opportunity areas or those two commercial districts. Encourages the applicant to hold a public meeting prior to the submittal of a PDMU zoning application. And specific changes from the PUD to the PDMU. It's a complete rewrite of the intent and purpose section. It's a reduction of the open space requirements. It eliminates the density maximum of 20 dwelling units per acre. And the addition of a list of findings of criteria to be used by the planning commission was added to it. And there's a requirement for open space to be maintained by a property owners association was added. One thing I didn't provide you tonight is a strike through and underline, and I've got multiple copies if you would like to see what the strike through and underline from the current PUD text is to the proposed text. You'll see about roughly half of the text was changed. That's all I really have for a presentation. Again, on the next page, you see the opportunity areas. We're only talking about opportunity areas 3 and 5. And then the next 2 pages show you those parcels in opportunity areas 3 and 5 and what their lot sizes are. And you can consolidate parcels that are adjacent to one another to get to the 3-acre minimum, but that just gives you, at least it gives you a rough idea of how many parcels currently have 3 acres and how many you might need to consolidate to get to the 3-acre minimum. Happy to answer any questions.
Members of council have questions for planning director. While you're thinking, Arnie, one question I have, and this is on page 18 of 40 of the packet, or 16 of 16 of the presentation. It's the map for South Main Street. And I was just curious if the homes on Maple Lane are intended to be included as part of the opportunity zone. They are.
And city manager asked us that on the map. So the last 2 pages that I was referring to, why would necessarily do we use the boundaries there? And I said it was a working map because we wanted to show the area. But then today, as I was prepping for this meeting, I went and looked more closely at our opportunity areas, and they actually include that half of Maple Lane.
Okay.
And I made this only one copy if you don't mind passing it around.
Sure.
But our opportunity areas actually include that short section in one side of Maple Lane.
Okay.
Now, hopefully it shows up well enough on there. With
striped
parcels.
yeah.
Correct. It's the striped areas on top of the parcel map.
Very good. Just wanted to make sure. Doesn't mean that it's just an opportunity if it should present itself, as it were.
Not an automatic, that's for sure.
Correct. Very good. And just to reaffirm, it takes 3 acres. So if somebody has 2.2, they've got to find an adjacent at least 0.8 to be able to move forward with this type of development or change.
That's correct. In planned unit developments, the unit is always sort of confusing, has been to me. So if you have a different type of development, you need sometimes a minimum parcel or acre to be able to accomplish successfully what that thing is that's different. The only example that I can think of locally is 60 West. When that came in the 90s, I believe that was actually the reason that we have planned unit development zoning here, because of that development. But if you took the duplexes that they are, and they're 1 building, 2 units, property line goes right up the middle of the 2 attached units, so they have a party wall. Well, if you did that on any of our other residential streets, it would look odd. But it doesn't look odd if you have how many ever acres they have, and it's more of a unit of a development, and it makes sense on that scale. So therefore, you typically in a planned unit development have a minimum acres size.
Right.
And for us, it's 3. When I started, it was 5, but it was reduced to 3.
3.
And we kept the 3 from the planned unit development to the planned development mixed use.
And Weatherburn's another example of utilizing the PUD to do something a little bit interesting, different, and
And it's changed over time. Yes.
right. Very good. Thank you. Members of council have any questions? Thank you, Arnie. This time, I'd like to open the public hearing and invite anyone who would like to speak to this topic. Is there anyone here this evening? Already checked, Jim, but thank you. Seeing no one wanting to speak to this subject, I will close the public hearing at 7:17 and ask for council's consideration. Preferably this evening. We can carry it on if you'd like.
I was looking for the ordinance number, but I moved to approve the ordinance for the PDMU.
Second. Have a motion, a second, any discussion?
And I'll just highlight that this is supposed to, it gives an opportunity for a developer to propose something that can be designed better than our traditional zoning. It's not meant to avoid our traditional zoning, but it's to allow some latitude to try something interesting and that could be better than what could traditionally be done. I like that about it.
And arguably, I'll pose it as a question perhaps. Anyone looking to purchase real estate in this area can understand what the future may hold for that it is designated as an opportunity zone that could be rezoned for the PDUM or something of that nature. So if you buy a home on Maple Lane, the landscape could change if someone acquires or amasses the 3 acres. So clarity and transparency. No other discussion. I'd ask for a roll call vote. Mr. Smith,
Aye.
Mr. Betts.
Aye.
Mr. Alligood,
Aye.
Mr. Ziegler. Aye. Ms. Strawn,
Aye.
Ms. Alexander.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Thank you all very much. Next item on the agenda is 6.2, continued public hearing and consideration to review a request from Echelon Resources. As we're continuing the public hearing, I don't know if there's anyone here who wants to speak tonight on this topic. We will continue the public hearing, but I would also call on Councilmember Strawn for any update from the most recent meeting.
We met again with Echelon and are fine tuning the design, and it will be our March 2nd meeting before we'll have something to present. And at that point, we'll reopen the conditional use permit for the development.
We'll continue it on.
Yes, right.
Yeah. It'll remain open until then.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. And Ms. Alexander for being a party to that committee and your good work with that developer. Next item on the agenda is consideration of the minutes, your January 19th regular city council meeting. Minutes were in your packet. Unless there's an objection, we will approve those as presented. And hearing no objection, they stand approved. Next item is citizens' remarks and comments. We welcome comments from the public. We do ask typically that you limit your comments to 3 minutes, but I didn't see anyone that has signed up. But at this time, is there anyone who would like to speak to council? We're in the dull roar of the air handler. It's 7:21. We'll close the citizen remarks and comments and go to the consent agenda. Acknowledgement of receipt of the abstracts of votes for the January 2023 special election.
I make a motion that we approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
Have a motion and a second and ask for a roll call vote. Mr. Betts,
Aye.
Ms. Strawn,
Aye.
Mr. Ziegler,
Aye.
Mr. Smith,
Aye.
Mr. Alligood,
Aye.
Ms. Alexander.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Thank you all. Next, unfinished business. I'll let the city manager speak to these.
Mr. Mayor, I have no information to share with the city council tonight, no recommendation. These are just being carried forward until we can, as staff, put together a few more pieces of information, then bring them to council.
Thank you, sir. Any questions for the city manager? Hearing none, we'll keep those on the agenda and in the forefront of our focus for the weeks and foreseeable future. Reports from boards and commissions, Blue Ridge Resource Authority, Mr. Smith.
Director Dudley has sent a draft budget to the advisory council. We meet on Monday to review and discuss and report any questions.
Excellent. Thank you, sir. Main Street, Lexington. Mr. Smith.
No report.
Thank you, sir. Planning Commission, Ms. Strong.
The Planning Commission met on Thursday, January 26th, and the Planning Commission unanimously approved an entrance corridor certificate of appropriateness and a site plan for Cattleman's Market, which is relocating to 534 East Nelson Street. It's very exciting to have them move into the city. Glad to see them. And the Planning Commission also unanimously approved an entrance corridor certificate of appropriateness for new signage for Rockbridge Barbell, which has relocated to 150 Walker Street. Hope they enjoy their new location as well. And we continued work on a zoning ordinance amendment for accessory dwelling units. And we received the Green Infrastructure Working Group final report, and this will be presented to council at a future meeting. We're still working on a date for that. That's all I have.
Very good. Any questions for Ms. Strawn? Very good.
And
Yes, sir.
I was at the planning commission meeting where you're talking about it, and we were talking about the possibility of a work session.
Right, a work session with council for planning and the green infrastructure working group to discuss it with us.
Right, yet to be scheduled.
Yes, right. I've been
Yes.
talking to the mayor about that.
Working to find the right 6 o'clock hour to schedule that and hear that report from that committee. Thank you, sir. Any other questions for Ms. Strawn? Regional tourism, Mr. Betts.
Related to USA Today's 10 Best Readers' Choice Award, the Chessie Nature Trail is a 2023 Best Recreational Trail nominee in the 10 Best Readers' Choice poll. You can vote until the polls close on Monday, February 6th at noon. You can visit the tourism's Facebook page for the voting link. And the Chessie Trail is currently ranked 3 out of 20. Related to Blue Ridge Outdoor Magazine's Best of the Blue Ridge Awards, Shenandoah Beer Works Trail is the 2023 Best Beer, Wine, and Spirits Trail, winner in the Southeast and Mid-Atlantic regions. The Rockbridge County breweries include Devil's Backbone, Outpost, Tap Room and Kitchen, Great Valley Farm Brewing and Winery, Heliotrope Brewery, Rockbridge Vineyards and Brewery. Passport program has generated over 52,000 brewery visits in the Beerworks footprint. Rockbridge County, Augusta County, Stanton, Waynesboro, Harrisonburg, and Rockingham County. Support the trail. You can go on Facebook for the tourism Facebook page and like and share. You can also visit beerworkstrail.com to learn more about the 17 breweries and the passport program. And that's all from our report. Oh, related to the ribbon cutting, my understanding is for the track trail, my understanding is it's still in discussion of how they're going to go about doing that. It's still in the works and I'll report back. I believe that's going to be in April.
April. Very good.
April 14th.
You can still have time to do your taxes after you cut the ribbon. Terrific. Any questions for Mr. Betts? And anybody of age can sample and evaluate and participate in the beer trail.
Well, I mean, I guess you would have to be
Of age.
of age.
Yes. Very good. Next time on the agenda, Raro, Mr. Ziegler.
The RARA Board of Directors met last night. As a reminder, everyone's invited to attend our meetings. Also, as a reminder, we still need a Lexington representative. So if anyone is interested in maybe joining that board, they can put forth their name. We talked extensively about the board undertaking some strategic planning possibly in the future, and we're evaluating how that might happen this spring as a board. We talked about the winter sports that are kind of wrapping up right now. As a reminder, we had 380 boys and girls participating in basketball. That was about 240 boys and 140 girls. Those 380 kids constituted 41 teams. You've heard me say that before, but remember, that means 41 coaches plus probably 41 assistant coaches. That's a lot of volunteers in the community that are helping coach our kids, and we can't do what we do without our volunteers. So I want to highlight that. Wrestling is also has a few more evenings of wrestling practice. We have a total of 40 kids wrestling, and that includes 3 girls. Recently, our RARO wrestlers had an opportunity to kind of have a tournament atmosphere, and they competed at a Perry McClure wrestling match, and that was awesome. It was a great atmosphere. Really, you know how it is. I think when you're a kid and you have an opportunity to compete in front of people, and it makes you nervous, but nervous in a good way. And it really let our kids get excited about that competition. Starting at the end of this week will be registration for our spring sports. And so that will go for about 2 weeks. And we, of course, want everyone to register on time before the February 20th. But if you happen to miss that deadline, please still have your registration turned in at our office, because we do want to make every effort to put every boy and girl on a team this spring for our spring sports. We continue to have pickleball, great participation with that. Adult basketball, great participation. And of course, we're on the agenda later Chad Coffey, our executive director, is here to talk about a neat opportunity having to do with a timber frame at Brubaker. But also at Brubaker, we're working finally towards getting a very important storage shed, barn. Barn might be overstating it, but shed where we can keep our valuable mowers that we continue to buy and need to maintain our fields, keep them out of the elements and keep other equipment out of the elements, and really kind of consolidate them so we know that they're safe and they'll last a whole lot longer. And so we're working on that. When Chad presents or we talk about this timber frame, please keep in mind that we will follow the procedures of doing a site plan and working with the zoning office, just so that will allow the public to see what we're thinking about. And of course, also to invite public comment. We've taken public comment before on RARO projects at the Brubaker Annex. The goal of the public comment is to make projects better, and they typically do help make projects better. So that's very exciting and something that Chad's going to talk about, that really cool opportunity with the timber frame. So I'll kind of leave it at that. But if you have any questions, Chad's here and he can answer them.
Thank you, sir. Any questions for Mr. Ziegler? I just offer thanks to the many coaches and volunteers that make RARO the success that it is. Mr. Smith.
I'm curious how many pickleball teams you have and how many adult basketball teams you have, since it's a new thing. And we keep talking about the youth program, which I think is awesome, but the adults are starting to participate.
With the adults, we've got close to 40 registered with pickleball. So right now our adult sports are kind of open court play. It's kind of show up, pick up, play. Pickleball's meeting 2 nights a week, Wednesdays and Thursdays at Rivermont out in Fairfield. As soon as we finish with our youth basketball and free some of the gym space up, one of those nights we'll be moving back to town. We'll move back to Maury River Middle School at that point. It's about 40 registered in pickleball, and then adult basketball has been going on now for 3 weeks. So, and it started the first week with 19 registrations, and now it has grown to 32 registrations in 3 weeks. So, gauging interest from those that are coming, possibly looking at a league, but we'll definitely continue with the open court play.
One question, is adult basketball call your own fouls?
Yeah.
Oh, geez.
It's been good. It's a good group of guys that's showing up, and ladies at this point. We've got both.
It's refreshing to hear that adults are participating in RARO, where before in other meetings that I've gone to in the past, where it was all focused on the youth, and the recreation is a pretty broad brush, and I'm glad that it's finding other parts to paint.
Absolutely. And that's part of what we're talking about with vision, and this maybe some planning later this spring is how to continue to provide for everybody.
Disc golf
possibly. I got an email about that today. So not a problem.
Do you want to mention some of your things that you've brainstormed for this coming summer? I mean, I'm reluctant to over advertise, but
so I kind of took last summer, being my first year in the position, the first summer of actually being in the position, I wanted to see how things went for us. But after surveying that, kind of reflecting, our plan for this summer is to sort of what you're saying, is to branch into recreation opportunities, not sport related, but recreation related opportunities for our youth. That's kind of start out small. Don't want to jump off the deep end, but we are in March, we're planning to announce what those programs will be. And what's very neat about those programs, I'm very careful not to tax my staff any more than they're already with the programs they're running. Our summer programs will be joint partnerships with community businesses and community organizations. So just to hint at that a little bit, I've spoke with Walkabout Outfitters, and I've spoken to Journey Outdoors. That's kind of in the realm of recreation that we're looking for this particular summer. Our big picture plan with that is let's offer it to the youth first. That goes well. I do believe that there's an educational opportunity for adults in the same recreation areas. So moving forward, I think our summer programming is going to continue to expand as well.
Great.
Excellent. Thanks, Chad. Thank you, Mr. Ziegler. Any other questions? Hearing none. Threshold. Ms. Alexander.
Threshold met on January 25th. We were excited to have two new members in attendance. And for the benefit of the new members, we reviewed the fact that a lot of what we've been waiting for has been the regional housing study to be able to move forward with some ideas. But we decided instead of waiting for that, we're going to move forward with some projects. We talked to the new folks about the history behind Threshold and some of the things that were done in the Diamond Hills, Green Hill and Centerville neighborhoods back in the 80s and 90s, up to the point of the Threshold's efforts with the development of Thompson's Knoll and the history as well as the result of that. There was discussion about the RFQ that we have for the VDOT parcel. And there was discussion about the hypothetical types of development for that property, which might hopefully include an element of affordable housing. So that was a huge part of our conversation of affordable housing. The takeaway from that was to make sure that we had a way of disseminating the RFQ information out to affordable housing developers, and so that they are not left out of the mix of other developers who may respond to that RFQ. Those developers that may not necessarily pay any attention or may not see the information, just make sure that they are made aware that it's there if there is some interest. We wanted to make sure that that happened, and Arnie Glazer said that he would share the RFQ with some of the housing development community that he's aware of. He also shared statistics with us relating to the number of existing affordable housing units in Lexington. And right now there are 166 affordable units that he can account for. And that's approximately 7.4% of Lexington's total dwelling units. The members discussed ways to promote making the vacant properties in Lexington, in which there are numerous ones, but they're privately owned, and how we can attract those property owners to consider filling their vacant properties with some development of some sort. So we're going to be working on ways to create that communication by way of pamphlets or some way of saying how we talk about buying local. We want to talk about selling local, to be able to have local families and people seeking housing to have opportunities in some of these different vacant properties that we have throughout the city. There was discussion about a vacant property registry, similar to ones used in other localities, both to keep track of unutilized properties and charge a fee associated with their vacancy. So that seems to be happening other places. And our chairperson that came here from Colorado said that there are some similar things that happen there, and wants to bring back that information about how that works. We do have some remaining grant money left, so we do plan to continue our reinstate our rehab program. It kind of went by the way during the pandemic, and we want to restart that to get some of the houses in those designated areas fixed up, but we need to get information back out to those households to see what their status is. So that we can use the unused portion of the grant. We talked about the possibility of when Spotswood opens and when VDOT opens, and all of these housing opportunities that take place could leave vacant houses throughout the city, or vacant units throughout the city, that we should probably have conversations with the Rockbridge Rental Assistance Office here in this building. Perhaps their funding source could provide additional vouchers that they would not have ordinarily provided funds for, that they could provide additional vouchers so that people who need affordable housing in the community can get the assistance that they need to fill some of those units that may become vacant. We talked about Washington and Lee's transitioning of their third-year students to on-campus residences and how that affected the rental market, just to give some of the history behind things that have been happening. The things that we're going to be doing is just making sure that we're following up on all the ideas that we have at our next meeting so that we can really move forward and become much more active and be a voice in the community for housing as well as affordable housing, and basically get back to the basics and the mission of Threshold. And we look forward to that. And we still have another vacancy, and we may have a second one, someone who may not be able to return.
Excellent.
That's all I had.
Members of council have questions for Ms. Alexander. Mr. Alligood.
On the, thank you for the report. On the part that you mentioned about charging a fee for vacancies, how does that work?
I don't know. He's bringing that back to us at the next meeting.
I see. Okay.
Mr. Smith.
What percentage of affordable units did you say we have?
7.4% of the total dwelling units in the area are affordable housing units
And that's in the city?
in the city.
Yes.
Yes. Mountain View Terrace, Lexington House, and Windermere. And
How,
then 11 housing vouchers in the city.
how does that compare with our regional partners? I mean, is that a typical percentage? Is that low? Is it high? Is there a target?
It's a great question for the Central Shenandoah Planning District Commission, who's spearheading the housing study.
We don't have numbers from the other localities, but you know, that's part of what we're hoping to get the feedback from the housing study. They indicated they hope to have our regional portion of that back to us sometime this spring, but you know, that's no guarantee. And that's why we want to go ahead and move forward with some projects, because we just feel like we can't wait, because affordable housing is such a need in this community.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Alexander. And thanks for the good work Threshold's doing to work on housing needs for our community.
And one other thing, and I don't know whether this is really going to happen or not, but it's a possibility that coming before us during this budget season, we may be asking for a few dollars in one of the line items for housing rehab.
Fantastic. Next item, Maury Service Authority, Mr. Alligood.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The MSA Maury Service Authority Board met on the fourth Tuesday. The next meeting is the fourth Tuesday of February. And we had news, and question is it good news? And what we have presented to what was presented to the MSA board was the first projected plan for what projects would happen over what time. And the projects for the water modernization plant only, not for the wastewater plant. It's my understanding that the wastewater plant information modernization will be forthcoming at this month's MSA meeting. And so the summary is that the projects for water treatment modernization only have been split into 3 different groups of 5 years. So you're talking about the first ones projected from now till 5 years, and then the next one is going to be 10 to 5 to 10, and then 10 to 15 in that range. The sum total of the estimate, and this is again estimates, we don't have contractors' bids on anything, is right at $32 million for the water treatment plant only. And so we now have a projected schedule for what projects need to occur over what time. So for the first 5-year period, the financial need is estimated at 15 million. The middle 5-year period, the estimate need is an additional 11 million. And for the farthest out, the 10 to 15 year section, the estimate is at 6 million. And so you sum those and you get 32 million. And that's estimate is $2023. So it doesn't take into account rising costs, if there are rising costs and inflation in that way. So we have the first plan and now we can start shooting at it in there. And so it's a good first step. It's something that I and the board have been asking for a long time, and finally is now available. And so we're looking to have the same type of information for the wastewater treatment plant. And as you all may recall, I mentioned previously that the overall estimate for both modernization plans is hovering in the neighborhood of $100 million. Now, that money is not all the city of Lexington. It's roughly 50-50 Rockbridge County and the city of Lexington. But in any event, no matter how you cut it, it's a large chunk of change that Lexington is going to have to raise money for in some way. And I see bonded indebtedness coming down the road for that kind of thing. So hold on to your interest rates and wallets.
Thank you, Mr. Alligood. Members of council have any questions?
The first phase, would you say that's 15 million?
Correct.
Okay.
The first 5-year period is estimated cost at 15 million.
Is that primarily focused on the raw water pump station and the some of the transmission lines?
Yes, it's specifically in the first phase. They're called phase 1, 2, and 3. In phase 1, it's the transmission line. It is the raw water pump station. It is there are a few different things in the water treatment plant, and as well as improving the infield road remote. It's called a clear well up there, the big tank that stores the water up by infield where the old water tower is. And then there's a sedimentation basin that is going to be replaced as well. And that probably will start occurring sooner than later. But those are the different projects in the first 5 years, the topics.
Did you all ever determine where the floodplain line is in order to determine where the raw water pump station is going?
I believe so. Surveyors came out and did their job. I haven't been out to see where the marks are,
Okay.
but they had to reconcile where that floodplain is. We all know where it is when the water comes up, and you would have thought that during previous high water events that it would have been pretty well defined, but apparently there were 2 different maps, as I reported
Right.
some time ago. 2 different government maps. So that's our government at work. And so now we hired surveyors to go figure out what that really meant.
Did it land somewhere in between, or did it support one flood mark?
I don't
Or
know.
not?
I don't
Okay.
know.
Just curious which government agency
I know.
was
That's
more,
a great, that's a
more
great
correct.
question. That's a great question. In there. I'll try to get the answer for that by next time.
Thanks.
Within the first phase, is there any further prioritization that will be done of projects?
Oh, yes, the different projects will necessarily have a timeline for each one. And for what it's worth, and I can provide this to everybody, here is a chart, a bar chart that shows which particular project and the timeline for each one. This is generally called a Gantt chart, and it's it's pretty good, but it's just it's the first shot at what the proposal is. And what's going to happen is these horizontal lines are going to slide horizontally as the project goes on. But here it is. And so we can shoot at it now and discuss the different aspects and maybe argue whether this particular part should come first.
Excellent.
But we didn't have this. This is great information to allow us to start having that conversation.
Other questions, Mr. Alligood? Exciting news out of MSA, and we will stay tuned and watch our wallets. Next item is Mayor's report, and I have a few items. First, I think most of council is aware, but for the current semester, Andrew Arnold is the representative for Rockbridge Report. So I anticipate that you will extend every courtesy as he goes about his business and covering the city council and city business. But Andrew, welcome, and anything we can do to help you achieve and make good grades, we are happy to do so. Next item, have for council's consideration candidate for the July 31st, 26 Planning Commission seat, and that is Shannon Spencer. We received her application several weeks ago, had the opportunity to speak with her this week, and she is eager to get started. She has background, as you may or may not be aware, with Lexington, having grown up here and attended Lexington High School, and most recently was in Pennsylvania and served as on the Planning Commission and Town Council. So she comes with a great deal of experience and a continued passion for our community. But I would ask for council's consideration, again, for Shannon Spencer for Planning Commission for the seat that expires 7/31/26.
I move to appoint Shannon Spencer for Planning Commission seat expiring 7/20/26.
Second.
Have a motion, a second, any discussion? Hearing none, a roll call vote. Mr. Ziegler.
Aye.
Mr. Alligood.
Aye.
Ms. Strawn.
Aye.
Mr. Smith.
Aye.
Mr. Betts.
Aye.
Ms. Alexander.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. And I told Shannon when I spoke with her, thank you in advance for your service and thoughtful work on the Planning Commission. Just as a reminder, the Chamber Dinner Dance is scheduled for February 25th. If you haven't bought your tickets, they're still on sale and a great way to support the Chamber. It's an annual fundraiser for them. The theme this year, for those of you who like to have fun, is Monopoly. So call the Chamber office and get your tickets. Along the lines, I think it was Ms. Strawn who recognized, and a big welcome to Cattleman's, who I think will do great in that new location and expanding their services. And Rockbridge Barbell, I know that they have much larger space. So those of you who need to tone up or work on your flexibility and overall physical fitness, Red at Rockbridge Barbell would love to see you. And there's plenty of parking in the parking lot. And I was unable to attend this morning at 10, but Chelsea Garden, I understand, had a reopening this morning. So if you have the chance to go by 2 doors down from Sweet Things, you can get some ice cream and wander down or stop at Legendary Eats and get a sandwich and then wander over to Chelsea Garden, and especially as spring is just around the corner. We had a work session prior to this to review and discuss Code of Ethics and Conflict of Interest, and a great deal of thanks to Jeremy Carroll and City Manager Jim Hallis for their work in presenting that, and my appreciation to council for thoughtfully discussing and working through as we work to do a better job for our friends and neighbors and citizens of Lexington, and offer for reflection and marinating on Potter Stewart's words of ethics as knowing the difference between what you have a right to do and what is right to do. I'll let you reflect on that, but very proud of the work that this city council does in carrying out the work of our friends and neighbors in our community. With that, I'll turn it over to the city manager for his report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Last week, the request for proposal for the former VDOT site did go out, and next week we'll have a pre-proposal Zoom meeting for developers who may be interested in the site but have some questions about it. RFP responses are due March 17th, so we set aside a pretty good period of time for them to do their due diligence, ask questions, and hopefully provide us with a number of RFPs. Glass recycling in our area continues to go very well. In January, Earth Magic Recycling in Buena Vista collected 4,800 pounds of glass to recycle into landscape sand. And of that 4,800 pounds, 2,564 pounds came from Lexington. So I think we're doing really well with that voluntary effort. I did hear, though, that the best way for them to recycle glass is to have relatively clean and unbroken glass. They actually sort it by hand. So obviously it's a little easier if you don't leave too much mustard in the mustard jar, et cetera. But they appreciate all the recycling they can get from us. City Hall, we hired a new utility account specialist this week. That individual will deal with all things that are water and sewer related. So there's a one-stop office where the registrar used to be. That'll be in City Hall. That individual should take residence there very soon. She'll be working out of Pat Delaney's, the treasurer's office, for a short period of time to sort of learn the ropes, and then out into the hallway there. And that's not a new position. That position was previously in the treasurer's office, and the treasurer decided that it would be easier and best for the citizens if there was one position dedicated to utilities. So she gave up that position, and that'll now be a utility account specialist. No difference in the positions or jobs that we have in the city. Also this week, we released a request for proposals for the space needs assessment for City Hall. And that study should, I should say that study, but request for proposals should be done at the end of the month. And hopefully we'll have somebody who's interested that we can interview for that purpose. Updates in the police department. Chief Green and Deputy Chief Fitzgerald met with representatives of the community festival recently and to discuss that upcoming festival this summer. One of the complicating factors is that the same day Washington and Lee is preparing to have freshmen move into campus. So we'll have a little extra traffic when we have that festival, and between the organizers there, Washington and Lee, and the police department, they're sorting through that. We think we can accommodate both without too many difficulties. The university is being very cooperative and making resources available just to make sure there's no conflict during that day. The other thing that the folks with the festival are discussing is whether or not to get a designated outdoor refreshment area permit, a DORA permit. No decisions on that yet, but they're looking carefully at that and discussing it with police and other city staff. The department filled the vacant records evidence manager position this past week. Members of the department continue to work with the regional law enforcement in our area and the 911 center to prepare for the cutover to the new computer-aided dispatch and records management system, SOMA. You may have heard of it. Officers in the police department completed 24 hours of foot patrol throughout the city last week of January. In the fire department, 2 members of the department have begun a 3-week class to become certified fire investigators, and a 3rd member of the department will go through the class in the months ahead. The department is interviewing 8 candidates or 8 applicants for the position that's now open in the department. Chief Dickerson was very pleased that they actually had 8 applicants for the position. The last couple of times they advertised, they had only 2 or 3 people interested. He believes it's primarily due to the fact that City Council did increase the compensation, and that they have the other incentives in the department for career advancement. So he thought that that made them much more competitive this go around, if you will. I learned earlier this week that the local health department did not hire a new director for the agency. They had 2 candidates they interviewed. Neither one accepted the position, and they don't know when they'll be going back out to reopen the process. They have some vacancies in Richmond, primarily the chief deputy commissioner who does the hiring. So without somebody there to do that hiring, they don't know when the process will begin again. It reflects on the difficulties everyone's having filling positions. Bit of good news. Friends of Rockbridge Swimming applied for and received a grant for specialized lifts and chairs to assist individuals with disabilities to enter and leave both the indoor and outdoor pools. In the indoor pool, the lift and steps were replaced, and in the outdoor pool, a pool access wheelchair will be purchased. So that if you have disabilities and you want to go into the pool, in the outdoor pool, in this particular case, you don't have to bring your wheelchair into the pool. You don't have to have somebody lift you into the pool. You can transfer from your wheelchair onto the specialized wheelchair and then enter into the swimming pool. So, a very unique opportunity to make available to those individuals. And that grant for $4,700 came from the Washington and Lee University Community Grants Program. And that program awarded $74,000 in community grants to organizations in the community in this last grant period. Many of us heard last Christmas, a few months ago, that the wreaths and bows on those wreaths were looking a little shaggy, if you will, a little drab. And so we looked at with Main Street Lexington what will be needed to replace those wreaths or rejuvenate them. And we made a decision to go ahead with that effort by winnowing down what the needs were or the desires were. We got to a cost of $32,000 to replace a little over 40 wreaths and then rejuvenate the rest. We had to make a decision to replace them before the end of the month to get a discount, which I presume was probably there in June too, but rather than wait to June and see, we went ahead and ordered them. That money is not in the budget, so you will be seeing a budget amendment coming forth in the months ahead for that expenditure. I will say, however, that Main Street Lexington is looking at their enhancement dollars, downtown enhancement funds that are potentially available to see if there's something there as well that they can participate in and share that cost with the city. The dam in Morse Creek was certified by the Department of Conservation and Recreation. It met the recent dam safety program requirements, and that is a 2-year certification due in large part to raising the crest of the dam, which we did last summer, and also making minor measures to improve maintenance of the dam. So it's required of every entity that owns a dam, and we are certified now that our dam is safe. In our planning and development department, year-over-year activities continue to increase. Last month in January, the value of improvements from permits issued was $2,979,000. For 2022, that number was $519,000 and a little change. Also, enforcement, development, and administrative activities were up over 2022. So there's still good activities occurring in the community for development and renovation of businesses and homes. In our replacement of city attorneys, we have 2 responses to our search for that position. The period available for receiving responses is open-ended, and review of responses can begin at any time. However, I would recommend that City Council delay a few more weeks to wait for additional responses before beginning to review those responses. And that's all I have, Mr. Mayor. City Council members, open to any questions.
Mr. Alligood.
Thanks for your report. With regard to the emergency CAD thing that you were talking about,
Yes, sir.
you didn't mention the cost. And I think I remember that it was a pricey thing. And would you remind me, if you know, what it was and what the total cost of that was? And I remember there was an issue with the previous vendor. And so that was good money spent after what kind of money and what the city's share might be.
The cost, as I recall, for the new system is between 450 and 500,000. And yes, the previous system was about 3 times that amount and lasted about 3 or 4 years. So it wasn't a decision that I think we hoped would not have been made. And we worked very hard to make sure we did not make that type of decision again. The city's share of that cost, really off the top of my head, I can't tell you what the dollars might be. It's based on population, which is what we do for most of our large capital expenditures. Without doing the math right off the top of my head, I don't know that number.
But it's not going to be 10,000.
No, it's not going to be 10,000. I can't recall what our population is. It's 16% of the area. Does anybody know?
It's usually 20, according to the DSS summary, it's 20%.
That's correct. Okay,
Yeah.
very good. Thank you.
So 500, that'll be 100,000.
Yeah.
in there. And that's new dollars. And then we spent previously the old dollars, and that turned out to be not good.
We
But we
are,
didn't have a choice. We were, we had choices, but we were part of the system that was selected. And now this is on top of that system that the vendor walked away from. Is that right?
the previous system, I believe, had problems primarily because it was implemented too quickly without a full understanding of what was required by the vendor. And some of that was because we didn't communicate completely with the vendor as to what our requirements were. And we took a lot more time. We hired a professional consultant to come in and work through the system and our needs with the staff, with our local law enforcement agencies and our volunteer fire departments and professional fire departments. They all have different needs when it comes to dispatching, record keeping, et cetera, and communicating with those agencies. So it's a pretty complicated system to put in place. So based on a number of factors, we failed the first time around.
Right.
It
And it's
took a
my
lot more time.
understanding, it was complicated. It's made complicated for a number of reasons, but it's going to be supposedly instantaneous communication with all public safety, fire people, police people from all the different jurisdictions. It's not just dealing with, say, county police and city police. It's everyone.
Well, I would not say instantaneous because there are protocols as to who is called on a particular type of incident. So, you wouldn't necessarily call the county sheriff for an activity in the city involving an ambulance, for an example. They might, if they're on the scanner around the network, they might know about it, but they're not necessarily be notified every agency.
Right. But this is the way to make those contacts. The centralized way to
Oh,
make
yes,
those
absolutely.
contacts.
Yes, everybody will be on the system. Mhm.
And so if we do 100,000 for this one, we probably did at least 100,000 for the previous one. Just
Absolutely.
speculating on the previous one
Absolutely.
in there. All right. So I hope we get our money's worth this time.
Hope that it works
And it works,
and
right?
supports the fire and rescue folks that are so critically need the information and ability to communicate, without a doubt. Without a doubt. Thank you, Jim. Any other questions for the city manager? Mr. Smith?
This wasn't part of your report, but had a question about East Nelson Street Bridge repairs. Is that on schedule?
It has taken a little longer. We'll probably be into March, maybe the end of March, from what I understand. Just delays, nothing of significance delayed, it just the delays you sometimes have in a project of that nature. Obviously, some cold weather over winter when nothing could occur. I say over winter near Christmas when nothing could occur, but I don't know how many of those days they would work anyway.
Thanks for the update. Appreciate it.
Mr. Ziegler?
And I'll briefly share that yesterday, Leslie, myself, Jennifer, Jim had a meeting with the county with Bob Day, Leslie Ayers, Ashton Harrison, Spencer, and then of course the two chiefs, Chief Dickerson and Chief Ramsey. And so this has been a meeting that's been happening at least twice a year for the last few years. And what we find as council knows is we've got a really important contract to provide rescue, fire and rescue services to the city, to the county around Lexington. And the contract works really, really well when there's transparency and communication. And so there's no surprises on what the city is planning, whether it might be acquisition of a new ambulance in FY24 and what that might look like for the county's contribution to that ambulance. So we've been meeting twice a year approximately, because what we find is it's really important to know our relationship and see the cooperation between Chief Ramsey and Chief Dickerson, so that then we can branch out and understand the complications and the challenges in the whole region to answering 911 calls and dispatching ambulances to parts of the county and Buena Vista, because it's all tied together. And so it was a great meeting. We met at the 911 center. I hadn't been there since it had been finished, to be quite honest, and had a quick tour. It looks great. Of course, we saw in the newspaper that the county is working on some of their solutions on where they will have a new paid crew to help at Cars Creek, and then also stationed for the time being at the 911 center to help with some of the calls to Glasgow or to help with some of the calls to other places. But what's important for this council to know is that the communication and the transparency, the data that Jennifer is able to share with them February 1st for the FY24 budget, it's really, really helpful. It's really important to our contract. And of course, you know that our contract, it's only a 2-year contract at a time. And it's super important to the residents of Rockbridge County and Lexington that the governments are working together to answer the questions and to make sure that the 911 and fire and rescue have the resources they need. So I just want you all to know that it went great. Open lines of communication. It's impressive to see the rapport between Chief Ramsey and Chief Dickerson because they talk every single day to provide the best care to Lexington residents, Rockbridge County residents in this area. And they think about the entire region. And so us politicians need to get out of the way, in my opinion, and let the first responders, the chiefs that know how to provide those services, do it. And politicians have run the risk of getting in the way of an ambulance answering a call when it's needed. And politicians should not do that. It's a matter of life and death in our area sometimes. I'll get off my soapbox, but it's really, you don't have to worry about Lexington and Rockbridge County getting along when it comes to 911 and fire and rescue.
Thank you, Mr. Sigler. Any other questions for the city manager? Jim, I just like to identify 2 things. One, elated to hear the holiday decorations having been purchased, and we'll have a shiny, bright holiday next year. And I'm also thinking that the additional applicants for the fire department may be related to the new ladder truck on order. You never know, but the benefits of the job. Thank you. Next item on the agenda, interim city attorney. Jeremy, any reports for us?
No report from me, Mr. Mayor. Happy to answer any questions anyone may have, of course.
Thank you. Members of council have any questions for the city attorney? Hearing none, we'll move into new business. And the first is a request to construct a pavilion shelter at Brubaker Park. And I'll call on the city manager for introduction.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As Council Member Sigler noted, this is an interesting opportunity that was not foreseen. There's a group associated with VMI that does a timber structure with the cadets every year. They had one scheduled this year. We were in the running for having one constructed in 2024, but the director of RARO was called and asked if they could move or we could move our application up to 2023 because they lost theirs this spring. And so with a few weeks to discuss it, Mr. Coffey decided that it was a good idea. I agreed with him. And we've got a location, as you can see on the map there. Mr. Coffey, RARO has also submitted a grant to the Community Health Foundation to pay for those costs that RARO cannot cover. They also have, in RARO that is, also has some funds available through a foundation or some sort of funding left to them. I don't know, I guess I'll let Chad explain that. A memorial from a family, yes, sir. So we've got some potential costs if the grant does not come through. Our city crews said they can go ahead and put the concrete in to help move the construction forward, and that we could pay for the concrete if the grant does not come through. We'd have to find the money somewhere, but right now the emphasis is on the grant itself and the belief that it will come through, but we don't know that. So we'd be fronting the money. I'd come back to you with Mr. Coffey in the future if we actually needed the money and do a budget amendment. So the primary purpose for me tonight to communicate to you is that, would you allow the structure to be built in the park? You know, get your concurrence with that or your blessing to build the structure. That's the business objective of bringing it to you tonight, other than the information that I'm sharing. But Mr. Coffey can go into more detail about this now at this point.
Welcome, Chad. Thank you for bringing this topic forward.
Absolutely. City manager did a great job of kind of giving you a summary of how this project came to be. It just started as a conversation and looking at most parks have a shelter, a pavilion of some sort. And in a lot of parks, it's the heart of the park. So in looking at the fields in that particular area around Brubaker. Some time ago, we started the conversation shortly after I started with Raro, but was really nothing more than talks. And then it just kind of progressed, and we were targeting 2024. I'm thinking a year and a half of planning. And about 2 weeks ago, got a phone call that the 2023 build had been backed out of in another area, allowing the opportunity for our build to be moved up. At Raro's board meeting last night, they did approve the funds from the Raro Memorial Fund that's there. That would cover, I think you all have the cost analysis, that would cover certain portions of the build. I'm willing to answer any questions you may have related to the project. Kind of the location that you're looking at, city manager now, and also Public Works, we kind of looked at different locations in and around Brubaker. That's kind of central, and it probably provides the most bang for the buck, so to speak. I do believe that this, to me, is not just a Raro project, it's a community project in my mind, because the number of people that I see using Brubaker, Foxfield, just the area, the park, it's consistent, and it's quite impressive, to be honest. Not to mention when you factor in all of Raro's uses of the fields, I think it's certainly worthy, but I hope.
It's a great resource for our community, to be sure. Chad, one question that I had in identifying the location, does this structure have a specific purpose that you have an expectation?
Not necessarily in particular. I mean, we have some uses that we would that Raro would perceive possibly using, but I mean, just serving as a shelter, it's serving as a community piece. For us, we're able to hold meetings there. A lot of times we're scrounging to try to find, during the warm weather times, places to meet with our coaches, our teams. I can see a definite use from Raro participants is the families while they're waiting on their kids at practice. A lot of times I see them sitting on the grass. They're sitting in their vehicles, and kind of the location, it keeps them close to their kids, no matter which field they're practicing on. It keeps them close to it, and I can certainly see them using that. The sky's the limit. I mean, really, as far as that goes, I would imagine, I can't speak for other organizations, but Lex Lacrosse uses Brubaker during the spring, and USSSA softball tournaments are using those fields as well. I would certainly imagine that if that shelter's there, they're going to take advantage of and use it as well.
Very good.
Do you figure you'll put picnic tables in there or just let people bring their own chairs?
I think there'll be some picnic tables. That's kind of the plan. Is there'll be some seating, but obviously, still allow for if they want to bring their own chairs. There'll still be some empty space as well.
Do we have the dimensions on
It's 20, the concrete
slab?
The concrete slab would be 26 by 35.
Okay.
The build has been one thing. I'm not sure about the other pictures, if you all have those or not. This build has been constructed 3 other times locally. This exact timber frame. Number one is the timber frame beside Rockbridge County High School's football field.
Mhm.
The one close, they've got 2. The one closest to the football field is this build. VMI's rifle range, outdoor rifle range, that timber frame there. And then Goshen Pass was actually the first time that these plans were used, is the pavilion out in Goshen. And I provided pictures of the one in Goshen Pass and Rockbridge counties.
Yeah, very good.
It was mentioned that a grant was applied for. How much was the grant that was applied for?
We applied for the whole amount, kind of what we're looking at related to the build, which was 20,000.
Okay.
That was from the community. It was applied to the Community Health Foundation. It was due February 1st. It was submitted prior to that. And speaking with a couple people related to and close to that grant, turnaround time on that, we should potentially know something early to mid-March. So it would be, some of the costs would already have been incurred, but certainly not all of the expenditure at that time.
Mr. Smith.
Several weeks ago, part of a discussion with Marissa Charlie, who's now on our threshold board, right?
Yes.
And part of the discussion was how structures like this just have an effect of being a default gathering place. And how that helps overcome, there's a term called civil inattention, where people are not engaged and inattentive to just participate in community efforts or what have you. So I think this is a great structure for a great place that will help continue that focus on preventing civil inattention. Marilyn, I'd say, talk with Marissa about that and how just structures like, the gazebo at Lilburn or Waddell just become these gathering places that help create and enhance community engagement. So this is great.
Fantastic. The other thing just kind of coming to me as we're talking is this build, all of these builds that the cadets and Mr. Mullen and them work to do these builds, they're all very much designed to be community based, community projects, it doesn't just fall on whoever's building it. It's a community partnership with a lot of different people. And there's another piece to this that RARO is working to sort out is the food and feeding of the cadets and providing. And we've got plans with that to include as many members of the community as we can. We've got some plans in place that we're working through on that I think a project of this nature, not to mention just the benefits of it being there, I think in the actual construction of it, it's a way to bring the community together.
And one of the things, Chad's been working on this, the staff's been working on this. I personally don't like things being sprung on us and say, oh, there's a deadline. I like to take our time and think about it. But this is a great opportunity. And Chad, and actually this opportunity wouldn't be possible without the Pickerel Memorial Fund. I want to mention that because if we don't get this grant from the Community Health Foundation, we've got the incredible amount of seed money still from the Pickerel Memorial Fund. And Chad talked to Dr. Pickerel and they're aware of this. And so it's just a great opportunity to folks that know the Pickerels and that money is really giving us the flexibility to move forward with this no matter what. No matter what, we're going to move forward with this. We want the grant. We can then use those funds for something else. But it's without those Pickerel funds, we couldn't be doing this. So it's super exciting.
When would construction start and how long would it take? Because it's quite an undertaking.
It is. It's 4 days start to finish. That's I believe our spring FTX, I think it's the first weekend of April.
Okay.
I think so. It's 4 days start from nothing and it's
Bam.
erected.
It's there.
4 days.
That sounds about right. FTX weekend.
I think
And then a
that's
few days after that.
yes.
Yeah.
And you may have seen in some of the stuff written that we've already got commitment and partnership with Rockbridge County High School, their building trades program to help us out with the roofing. So when I speak of the community kind of rallying around this, it reminds me of kind of the old fashioned barn raising.
Absolutely. Chad, one other detailed question. Number one, the Mullen family that oversees this and manages all these builds are to be acknowledged, uplifted, and celebrated for the amazing contributions they've made to our community. With this one in particular, I can't remember at the high school or any of the others if it has electricity or lighting. And this one, I don't see that provided. It doesn't look in this quote, but if that's something that is intended to be done.
It is intended to be done.
Okay.
Working through that with Public Works. It's certainly, in talking with them, it's certainly something within their purview that they can handle on
Terrific.
that, not looking really for anything more than a couple outlets and lights.
That's very good.
In that respect.
Very good.
The actual grant, when I submitted the actual grant to the community health, I had actually gone back and added an allowance of money for the electrical costs, which pushed it the total comes a little under 20 with that pushes it right at that 20,000 that you asked about.
Very good.
Mhm.
Very good.
That does increase the amount of community uses that space
ma'am.
can give you.
Absolutely.
Great.
Just got to make sure the music that gets plugged in doesn't get too loud.
That's that noise ordinance.
Exactly, exactly. I think it would be appropriate if council would like to endorse this project. I don't, there's no ask for funding at this point. We've applied for the grant. May need to provide some assistance, cash flow for RARO, but would welcome a motion for support of this.
Happily. Moved.
Moved.
Exactly.
Before you second, do you have the funding coming from the potentially coming from the foundation?
They have applied. I
You serve on the,
may have to recuse myself there.
you'll vote here, but not participate there.
One or the other, I would
Okay.
think.
She serves on the committee that will review the grant applications. Sorry to put you on the spot. Right.
I am not.
I think you're okay to vote here and then we can talk further about it.
Okay.
Very good. Have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, a roll call vote. Mr. Alligood.
Aye.
Mr. Betts.
Aye.
Mr. Smith.
Aye.
Mr. Ziegler.
Aye.
Ms. Strawn.
Aye.
Ms. Alexander.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Chad, good luck.
Thank you very much.
And if you need volunteers, send out the appeal to council. We'll see who shows up. Usually, if you need some hot air to get things lifted, we can help out.
Greatly appreciate it. So look forward to hopefully everybody seeing it in April. Thank you.
Outstanding. Next item on the agenda is 15.2 review of a commitment to purchase property for future site for the Department of Social Services. Jim.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We all know that over the last number of months, there's been an effort in our region with City of Buena Vista and Rockbridge County and Lexington and Department of Social Services to seek out a location or facility for a new Department of Social Services facility. Over that time period, a site in Buena Vista was identified. The site is vacant. It's very well positioned for that office and associated offices that could co-locate there. Has utilities to the site. It's graded, good access just behind the food line and the 911 center to US 60. Well located in our region to provide the services that are intended to be provided there. In order to hold that site, an option was procured just about 6 months ago. We paid $9,000 to hold that option, and the option will expire on the 5th, which is just a few days from now. This evening, the City of Buena Vista is also meeting, and they will exercise the option. They were the ones who procured the option since the property is in the City of Buena Vista. When they exercise that option, should they vote to do so, we are, if you will, also on the hook for our share of purchasing that site. That site is the site that we paid for, or not paid for, that we had held, and the price we had held was $438,000. Our share would be just about 20.3%, which would be $88,914. So the working group and city manager, myself, and county administrator, the Department of Social Services director, all believe that we're at a point now where even though we don't know exactly what type of facility will be built there, we either need to move forward or this effort stops. And so we are definitely recommending that each entity move forward. I spoke with county administrator. While they cannot meet before the deadline, he's talked with his supervisors and has good support from that group. I believe that there's also support in the City of Buena Vista to move forward. And so I'm not asking for action tonight because you're not going to exercise that option, but understand that when that option is exercised, we do have an obligation, at least morally, if not legally, to continue to move forward and pay our share of that purchase price. Now and in the future, we are still working with the other agencies that are interested in that site to determine who will actually be sited there with the Department of Social Services, what type of structure will be built. And we are working very carefully on that because the Department of Social Services does have a deadline when the lease they're in will expire. So we'd like to try and have their facility built before that lease expires. It's getting close now. We have 2 years. So to try to accomplish that. So that's where we stand. Obviously, we'd like to answer any questions you might have. Obviously, like to see at least a nod of the head that we understand and we want to move forward. And again, happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Jim. I would ask if there are any comments or objections to the city manager moving forward as we follow the lead of Buena Vista in their action this evening. Seeing no
This is an
objections.
exciting development after many years of discussion, and I'm glad it's moving forward. And I think this location is great, especially having the opportunity to put more agencies there in collaboration with DSS. It's a great opportunity.
Thank you, ma'am. Yeah, very good. Hearing and seeing no objections. The only comment I would make, city manager, is I noticed on page 4 of 7, the settlement shall take place within 90 days of the exercise. Hopeful that if at all possible, it could be moved to fiscal year 24. So it could be a regular part of the budget as opposed to unique. But if it can't, if the 9 days is firm, but if you don't ask, you don't know. But would love to do it in the next fiscal year, if possible.
We'll discuss it.
Very good. Thank you, sir. Next item on the agenda is 15.3. Mr. Betts had requested discussion or wanted to present the idea of repaying higher interest debt for the city. So, Mr. Betts.
So is my understanding that there are a couple of things coming due within this fiscal year or next fiscal year around the 5% interest rate. And I just wanted to see if there's any report on what it would take to potentially pay that off. Has there been any penalties discovered for paying that off early, and just see where we are with that? Just checking in.
The finance director and I did a cursory review. Most of that fell on her shoulders. There are no penalties for us to, pay those loans off early. We haven't been taking the time yet to go any further in that work unless Ms. Bell would suggest she has spent any more time on it in the last few days. Okay, so one of the things that we did discuss is that, of course, that those interest payments were spread over several fiscal years, so we have to come up with all that money now. So we're looking at how, we've got cash on hand, obviously.
Right.
We just have to come to you and say, okay, here's what it costs. We'll use dollars today, not dollars in 2 years.
And my understanding was for one of the projects that I believe was coming due either this fiscal year or next fiscal year, it might have been the courthouse, I want to say, renovations. We could save about $20,000 potentially. So that's significant money. If it's coming due and we have the money, it doesn't make sense not to save $20,000.
It's worth proceeding. I agree.
Thank you.
In your calculation, did that give a value to holding the cash as well, or just the reduction in eliminating the interest payment? Because if we're earning 4% and we're paying 5%, that 20,000 would diminish if you hadn't accounted for the 4%. Historically, we've been earning 0.0 nothing, but with interest rates in the past year having moved so dramatically. But one thing for your knowledge is historically the bond counsel usually will come to us when there are opportunities to refinance debt and do so on a pre-refunded basis and lower the interest rate in some instances. And we've taken advantage of that in the past couple of years when interest rates have been so low. I can't remember the reasoning, but the the debt that you're speaking of, that was structured so that we weren't able to refund that at a lower interest rate, but will be paid off in the next, I believe, 12 months, if I remember correctly. So, but always welcome the opportunity to save money.
Right. Absolutely.
Very good. Mr. Alligood.
And that was at a time when we're doing the refinancing where the spread was much greater than 1%. You're talking about now the spread being 1%. So really 1% money is still pretty cheap,
Relatively speaking, yes,
cheap enough not to want to repay it.
quite possibly. But always looking for an opportunity to save money and
Right. Not to repay it all at once.
correct.
Yeah.
And that's, I just wanted to explore and see if it makes sense to pay it off early.
Right.
And save money. I think we should do it. If not, there's no reason to do that. So just
Exactly.
trying to save taxpayers some money.
Absolutely.
Worth looking at.
Well, we'll have lots of opportunities to discuss that and tax rates as well as expenditures for the city as we plow through the budget season. So that's in many instances where the rubber meets the road on saving our taxpayers money, without a doubt. We have no closed meeting. I don't know if there's anything else to come before council. Hearing none, we stand adjourned. Thank you all and have a great Groundhog's Day. What's left of it. Janie.
Thank you.